In this talk, I will describe how crowdsourcing can be used in personal information management. Crowdsourcing has been able to do some pretty amazing things, and I will start with some examples. Galton, in 1907, that's about 100 years ago, went to a farmer fair where 800 farmers competed to guess the weight of an ox. And not a single one guessed it right. But what's impressive is that the average of all guesses was only 1 pound away from the exact weight. This is an example of the wisdom of the crowd, where independence of many estimates can provide results that no individual can. Over the last decade, crowdsourcing patterns have created much more complex ways to chain these estimates together to be able to solve even more challenging tasks. For example, this totally illegible text was deciphered by online workers using iterative refinement. Researchers have even created plugins for Microsoft Word to provide crowd-powered grammar checking and summarization of text. And with things like Wikipedia, people coordinate at a scale, accuracy, and keep it up to date in a way that no centralized organization has been able to do in the past. Research has shown that remote online workers can be organized in such ways to provide metadata structure and to identify important information when needed. For example, in a project that was helping blind people, the blind people were able to take pictures of items they were interested to read, and the crowd was able to read the labels of those items back to them. Now that we've seen some of the achievements of crowdsourcing, can crowdsourcing help us manage our personal information? For example, email overload and task management. In this thesis, I apply crowdsourcing to email overload and task management. People are overloaded on both aspects because management requires planning, decision-making, and it consumes willpower. So people tend to postpone this planning, and as a result, they miss deadlines or they fail to complete goals and expectations. And there's big unsolved problems in the existing literature. How to effectively apply crowdsourcing in personal information management. And if you do that, how to address privacy and accountability concerns for private user data. In this dissertation, I'm introducing the Genies pattern for organizing and scaling crowdsourced work, the Valet pattern for addressing privacy and accountability concerns, and I instantiate those two patterns in a couple of systems, Email Valet and Task Genies. I'm also using these systems to show experimental evidence that this external organization is helpful to people and that crowdsourcing is an effective way to provide it. Email Valet is an email client that automatically extracts tasks from people's inboxes, and Task Genies is a to-do list program that provides action plans to tasks so that people can complete them more easily. I will start with Email Valet, the Valet crowdsourcing approach, and behavioral findings from these two. Then I will talk about Task Genies, the Genies pattern, and the related findings. We want to extend crowdsourcing such that people feel comfortable sharing personal information with assistants. And to do that, I'm going to introduce the idea of Valet crowdsourcing. A Valet key for a car is a key that can give access to a driver only to open the door or maybe start the engine, but it doesn't let them access the trunk or the glove compartment of the car. So this key is effectively giving two guarantees. One is that it limits functionality. The driver can't get into your trunk. But it also establishes accountability. So the driver is responsible for the car while they have the key, but not before or after. And this is a really nice interface, actually, because it's simple and clear to everyone. Similarly, Valet crowdsourcing parsimoniously gives assistants just enough access to do most of the work without giving them access to all user data. Second, it seeks to establish accountability by making access boundaries transparent and by designing access logs so that transgressions are recorded and the crowd workers are held responsible for their actions. To understand what led us to Valet crowdsourcing, Let's look at email overload. Prior research has found that people spend a lot of time to transform their overwhelming inboxes to actions they need to take. In this inbox, the important tasks are just in these few emails. It would be nice if I could see only those 5 emails, and even better if I could see the actual tasks, because that would give me time it would save me time that I have to reread and remember what the tasks are in those emails. For example, there's an email there with a subject will be full soon, and that really means that I need to buy a new hard drive for the server. But would you feel comfortable giving crowd workers access to your inbox to extract those tasks for you? Well, we surveyed 500 US residents, and less than 4% of them was willing to share. They were worried about privacy and accountability. One informant said, "I'd want some liability insurance for what a rogue assistant might do with my information." So Valet crowdsourcing is trying to address exactly these problems, and we created Email Valet as an instantiation of this. Gmailvalet.com is the first application of Email Valet. It's an email client that gives access to the same emails that you have in Gmail, but it has 2 interfaces. One interface is for users, where they can see everything and they can perform the usual actions that you do with your email. And another interface is the interface for assistants. And in that interface, you get access to only a limited subset of your inbox. The assistants can perform only a limited subset of the actions based on the user's preferences, and all actions of assistants are recorded. Also, Email Valet has a task list interface. It incorporates that right into your inbox. So the assistants extract tasks for you, and you can accept or decline those extractions, and you can add any missing tasks. To build better common ground, when a user declines a task, then the system offers him the ability to leave a note so that they can tell the reason why they declined the task. Here we see a user reading emails and extracting tasks, and clicking on the various tasks to see which emails they're coming from. So for privacy, assistants have no access to user passwords. They cannot search old emails. In fact, they can only see the last X emails from a person's inbox, where X could be 100, for example. For further peace of mind, users can restrict access to only emails that are in priority inbox, or that have stars, or that emails that they have sent to themselves. And they could even restrict it to emails that have a special label assistant, possibly using Gmail filters to select those. And for further peace of mind, there's a specific option where the users can specify block keywords, for example, an email address or a name or a domain name, and the emails that contain those keywords are always invisible by the assistants. For example, someone can put the name of his girlfriend or the bank account name, and they know that even if those emails would be visible due to the other rules, they wouldn't be visible because of this feature. Finally, for a special block keyword is default to everyone, and this prevents from somebody else's assistant see a private message that you're sending to them. You can include that keyword and you know that it is in his block list. Users decide what actions the assistants can take. For example, they decide whether the assistant can archive, delete, reply, or star messages, and whether they can manage tasks. For transparency, emails that are visible to assistants are clearly marked on the inbox, and assistant actions are always recorded. Here's a screenshot with one email selected. We can see those preview icons on the inbox directly. So messages that are visible to assistants have a human icon, and messages that are not visible to assistants have a lock icon. Hovering over these icons reveals the reason why the system made this visibility choice. And by clicking on the icon itself, it overrides that. Assistant actions are also displayed. Here, an assistant has extracted a couple of tasks for one of the emails. A record of all actions is visible along with the message details right here. And in a separate view, you can see the complete log file. In a controlled experiment, we tested whether Email Valet helps people complete email-based tasks and how people adopted Valet sharing. It was a within-subjects design with 28 participants. They were assisted by 3 Crowdsourcing workers. The study had 3 conditions, counterbalanced in a Latin square manner. So the conditions were control, self, and Valet. To describe the conditions, I will say that the assistants extracted tasks for all participants for all conditions, but these tasks were hidden from the participants during the control and self phases. In the control condition, people just used email in the traditional way. In the self condition, they were encouraged to extract their own tasks out of emails. And in the Valet condition, they received the full email Valet assistance. The measures in this study were assistant accuracy and completion rate. We gathered these by asking participants at the end of each condition to correct the task extractions that were made by the assistants and to mark all completed tasks. The study concluded with a survey to explore reactions to Valet crowdsourcing. Let's look at some of the results. First, participants completed twice as many tasks in the Valet condition compared to the other 2. Also, the assistant task extraction accuracy improved over time from 65% up to 85% at the end of the study. And the cost of the system was relatively inexpensive. It cost about $2 a day per user, even at an $8 per hour wage for the assistants. But how do people react to Valet crowdsourcing? Well, we expected they would be very reserved in sharing, but we found out that nearly everyone shared at least some part of their inbox with automatic Valet filters. In fact, only 2 participants handpicked messages to show to the assistants. At the end, only 3 people said that they would stop using Email Valet for privacy reasons. The majority of participants, 18, initially felt uncomfortable with sharing, but 11 of them reported that they were feeling more comfortable over time. And that finding is really reinforcing the belief that privacy is a dynamic dialectic process. When the benefit exceeds the invasion, people are willing to share information they previously considered private. One participant said, "Originally, I did not share emails from my boyfriend, but I changed that after realizing he sent me emails with tasks for me to do." Another one said, "My uneasiness reduced over time as I was impressed with the accuracy of correct tasks generated for me." Assistants also shared some discomfort. One assistant said, "Some emails, I felt like I was invading their privacy because it was emails between my clients and their family, but I didn't react anyway because it's a job I have to do." As we saw, Email Valet has plenty of elements to support accountability. However, these were not the most frequently used features of the system. But the mere fact that they exist increased comfort for the users and adoption for the system. To recap, I presented a first use of crowdsourced expert assistants to support personal information management, Valet crowdsourcing that seeks to balance privacy and accountability for sensitive data, the Email Valet system for email task management, and empirical results that crowd assistants can manage information accurately. Email Valet extracts tasks from inboxes. But how do people complete their tasks? And how can the crowd help them complete more tasks? That's exactly what TaskGenius is studying. A major issue with task execution is that high-level tasks are not actionable and people delay doing them. Michael Slakenerny from PhD Comics has a to-do list that contains a bunch of concrete tasks and one high-level task, work on thesis. As time goes by, he completes all of his concrete tasks, but his high-level task lingers. In the end, he declares bankruptcy and creates a new task list that contains still that lingering high-level task. Researchers studied the importance of forming action plans through another experiment as well. They talked to students, to university students, about the benefits of a flu shot. But they divided the students into two classrooms. In one room, they just talked about the benefits. In the other room, they also talked about, asked them to form action plans on how they're going to get that shot. And they found that students in that room got the shot more frequently. So just to be clear, an action plan is simply a list of steps to complete a task. For example, in the task exercise frequently, a possible action plan can be get a gym membership, create a weekly exercise schedule, and find a workout buddy to keep you accountable. Let's look at some of the benefits of creating action plans. As we saw, people get more efficient with smaller steps to act on. Also, completing those intermediate steps is rewarding. And it's easier to make smaller decisions on how to proceed when you have smaller steps to do. Finally, people are more productive when they are interrupted between steps than during steps. So having those action plans provides a good interruption moment. It's the time you mark off a small task on your list. However, planning takes time right away, whereas the benefits of planning come later. So people often fail to plan. Can technology help provide those plans automatically? And if that's possible, do those plans help? Or is it the act of contemplating the plans yourself that provides the benefit? Here's a sketch of completion rate against convenience. Not creating action plans is convenient because you don't have to do it, but it's less productive, as we saw. And creating action plans is more productive, but it's inconvenient because you have to create them. Could we combine the benefits from both with automatically provided action plans? And that's the main hypothesis of TaskGenius, that yes, providing action plans helps people complete tasks, and that crowdsourcing is an effective way to do it. Plans exist for some domains. For example, recipes, Instructables, eHow, and you can even search or create your own. But all that takes time and effort, and that's exactly what we want to avoid here. TaskGenius is a to-do list that automatically decomposes people's tasks to action plans. On the left, you can enter tasks and subtasks like a tree. And on the right, you see action plan recommendations automatically generated for you. We do that using Amazon Mechanical Turk workers to create the action plans, and NLP techniques to reuse existing ones when possible. Just to clarify that Amazon Mechanical Turk is a community of about 200,000 online workers who execute chunks of work for small payments. For example, they are effective at labeling images, or in our case, for creating action plans. Here is a preview of the crowdsourcing interface of TaskGenius, but I will talk more about it a bit later. To create action plans, we tried using 3 simple crowdsourcing patterns, and we found problems. So we created a 4th pattern, the Genius pattern, to address these problems. Let's look at these patterns one at a time. We started with a parallel pattern. In the parallel pattern, all workers were asked to independently create action plans, and in the end, they rated and they picked the best. The results were the results, as in many cases we see in Amazon Mechanical Turk, there was a lot of spam or low quality in independent contributions. Also, because everybody was working independently, the good ideas from one worker could not propagate to the plans of other workers. And we even saw that many of the workers were providing solutions to the wrong problem. And here's an example of that. For the task, read the rest of the hidden reality, which is a book. One worker broke it down into its words, and another tried to execute the task. No matter what we changed in the description of that we provided, that didn't help. We realized that the more text we add, the worse the results are, the less people read it probably. In the serial approach, the first worker creates a plan. The second worker improves that plan based on improves the plan of the first worker, and the third worker continues on the second worker's work, and so on and so forth. This creates multiple versions, and the best one is selected in the end. Well, in this pattern, we still didn't see much improvement in quality, and we even further saw a new problem, which was fixation to early ideas. Sometimes the first worker would provide a bad idea, and then everyone would just improve on that. Here's an example. For the same task, read the rest of the hidden reality. The first worker created read chapter 1 to 3, read chapter 4 to 6, and so on and so forth. And then following workers improved it to read chapter 1, read chapter 2. So to combine the benefits from both approaches, we created a revising approach, which in the beginning it asked workers to independently, like in the parallel approach, create their action plans. After they created an action plan, the workers were displayed all the versions of other action plans created by other workers, and then they were asked to revise their own if they wanted. In the end, the best was selected with rating. This technique actually gave us better quality, and we saw that good ideas propagated, but they actually propagated slowly because probably because people had already completed their work when they were asked to look at the examples, and they rarely revised their own work. It was already done. So it was still a wasteful and expensive way to produce the plans. To solve all these problems, we created the genius pattern that is composed of 3 phases: rate, contemplate, and synthesize, and I will explain those right away. So we still need ratings to determine the best solutions. And instead of putting these ratings at the end of the work of the worker, we put them at the beginning. But to avoid fixation to fixation, like in the serial approach, we asked workers to rate action plans of different tasks than the one they were supposed to decompose. Here is the rating phase of Task Genius for read the rest of the hidden reality task. Several action plans can be seen on the same page, and workers rate them to find the good solution. But this rating also trains them and calibrates them on the quality of that is expected. It also demonstrates in the upfront that work will be assessed and how it will be assessed, and possibly this way dissuades some lazy workers from continuing. To encourage independent thinking, workers start creating their action plans from a clean slate. And only in the middle of producing their own solution, they see previous solutions of other workers on the same problem. This is the Task Genius interface, creating action plans. The task is shown at the top, and steps are entered at the bottom. The workers think, conceptually come up with their own solution, enter the first step, and the moment they submit the second step, it's when the synthesize phase begins. This is the moment where the worker has entered his second step, and he sees independent related steps from other previous workers on this same task. Since the worker has already contemplated a solution, and he has even started creating it, but he hasn't finished, he can easily identify good and bad ideas on the solutions of other workers. And since he hasn't finished his solution yet, the activation energy to integrate those good ideas is small. Great ideas this way bubble up, and solutions converge to great solutions very fast. Here is a drag and drop of a good idea, and editing a grammar mistake of that. As a reminder, the main task genius hypothesis is that providing plans helps people complete more tasks. In a between subjects experiment, we tested exactly this hypothesis. The experiment had 280 participants, and we asked them to submit 20 tasks that they were planning to complete in the near future. 1 week later, we measured how many tasks these participants had actually completed. And the study had 3 conditions. The 2 main conditions were control and crowd. In the control, we applied no intervention. In the crowd, we provided participants with action plans, and we sent them those action plans by email. But sending those emails serves as a reminder, possibly, for the task. And to control for the effect of this reminder, we created the 3rd condition, prompt, which sent participants emails advising them to create their own action plans. And we sent those email prompts at exactly the same timing and with a very similar wording than compared to the crowd condition. We found that participants who received action plans completed more tasks compared to all other groups with statistical significance, which supports our task genius hypothesis. But is providing plans equally helpful to all kinds of tasks? For the example in the PhD comic, it is possible that high-level and lingering tasks can benefit more. So we asked participants to classify their tasks as high-level or not, and old, lingering, or new. And we hypothesized that providing plans help more with high-level than with small and well-defined tasks. The results show that there is a clear statistical significance between, there's a clear statistical improvement between crowd and control for the high-level tasks. And even though there is also an improvement for small and well-defined tasks, it is marginally significant, which supports our hypothesis. And we also hypothesized that providing plans helps lingering tasks more than new tasks, which we also found true. And this is a similar graph than before that shows the similar effect. In some cases, people enjoy giving each other advice, and they're really good at it. So a natural way to scale action plan provisioning is to have users create plans for each other, like a community sourcing. To test this hypothesis, a second study was conducted. In this study, we had 388 people who again submitted 20 tasks. The study was very similar. In the end, we measured the number of tasks, the number of tasks that people completed. And in this case, we had 2 conditions: control, which was the same as in the previous study, and community. The community was very similar to the crowd condition of the previous study, where participants received action plans by email. But we also asked them during this condition to create action plans for others. So in the end, we measured, as I said, the number of tasks that participants completed, but also the number of action plans that participants contributed. We found that community-created plans were also helpful, statistically significant results, but participants didn't contribute enough. This graph shows the distribution of plan contribution among participants. And interestingly, we found that the more plan participants created for others, the more plans they created, the fewer tasks they completed themselves. And this could mean that either contributing is distracting or that the procrastinators self-selected to contribute more instead of working on their own tasks. Through the studies, we found that, we just observed that people have a lot of similar tasks. For example, almost every participant had a cleaning task, and many participants wanted to exercise more. So here is actually the top 10 tasks among the tasks submitted by 140 people. Cleaning, buying, calling people, paying bills are all very common tasks. So creating action plans for similar tasks seems wasteful, and we hypothesized that reusing action plans can also be helpful to people with similar tasks. For that reason, we created an NLP algorithm that identifies similar tasks and automatically reuses plans across them. And we used this algorithm to run a third study to test the reusability hypothesis. The study had 39 participants, two conditions, recycle and control. In the recycle condition, people received plans that were mostly reused from before. And in the control condition, it was the same, no intervention. Again, we measured the completion rates, and the study found that supported the hypothesis that reusing action plans helps significantly increase task completion rate. Just to give you a little more understanding around the algorithm used a corpus of 6,000 action plans, and we force-matched 95% of participant tasks to existing plans. And for the bottom 5% of tasks for which the NLP algorithm was the least sure about that it had found a match, we used the crowdsourcing. To recap, the Genius pattern strategically presents examples of prior work to increase quality. The Task Genie system is leveraging crowd, community, and NLP to provide action plans. And we found that automatically providing action plans helps people complete more tasks. And combining crowd and algorithmic approaches, we can provide those plans. To summarize, this dissertation found that crowds can effectively organize and break down personal information to help people be more effective. And I think this is just one example where human computation can improve knowledge work by helping people focus on what's important and to avoid information overload. To do this, we had to invent a couple of things. First, we needed a way to reliably get higher quality plans and tasks from the crowd, so the Genius pattern enabled these quality ideas. Second, the concerns that people had about turning their emails into an assistant were very real, so we had to invent the Valet method for addressing privacy and accountability. Going forward, crowdsourcing can be applied in many other areas of personal information management: calendar, contact lists, and others. And people's tasks not only can be organized, but they can even get executed. And crowdsourcing is not even the only way. For example, tasks such as buy this book can be automatically executed by an algorithm, change the car oil can be done by local workers, plan my trip to LA can be accomplished by online workers, and choose a gift for a birthday can be completed by peers, friends, and family. But more crowdsourcing patterns are necessary. How can, for example, knowledge about an individual be institutionalized in a crowdsourcing system to provide quality 24-hour support? And how can we guarantee fair payment to crowd workers? How can we apply crowdsourcing to more complex verticals, such as medicine, law, education, design, or even research itself? Privileged executives and CEOs have always been relying on assistants to help them manage their personal information. Crowdsourcing has the potential to democratize this kind of service, make it accessible and affordable to everyone, even to the crowd workers themselves. Just like a waiter becomes a restaurant client right after his shift, a crowd worker can enjoy the benefits of having his personal information managed by the crowd. So this is only possible with crowdsourcing and its tremendous price reductions, as it is unlikely that the traditional personal assistant would have the resources to pay another personal assistant to help them with their own tasks. This way, not only people can have more time, but also new forms of job opportunities can be created. To conclude the presentation, I will show you a video from ABC and NBC News on email Valet.
How would you feel about a total stranger going through your email? That's the question posed by a Stanford research project. As ABC 7 News reporter Jonathan Bloom found out, the answer has everything to do with what you get in return.
You probably wouldn't hand your car keys to a total stranger, unless that stranger is a valet parking attendant. In fact, some cars come with a special key that limits what valets can do.
You know that they can drive the car, but they can't open the trunk. So likewise, we're thinking about what it would be like to have valet software.
Professor Michael Bernstein is an advisor on a graduate research project called Email Valet. Just like valet parking, it aims to save you time and energy by having an assistant comb through your Gmail inbox for you.
So the assistant can see a limited amount of their emails. They can perform a very limited amount of actions based on the user's requests, and they can help them cope with email overload.
PhD student Nicolas Kokkalis created a program where, for about $2 a day per user, an assistant who works part-time from home can read just the emails you want them to see and turn your messy inbox into a tidy to-do list. It's something computers just aren't good at on their own.
People do a much better job than machines at the humble creativity of negotiating everyday life.
Of course, you can make that to-do list yourself, but the study found people who used an assistant wound up actually doing more of the tasks on their lists.
Just the fact that a task is there for you, it reduces the activation energy to actually do the task.
So an assistant can help you be ultra productive, but how many people actually want a perfect stranger going through their email? Well, the study found something surprising.
We realized that people get less concerned about privacy when they start receiving benefits from a system.
Though less than 4% of online survey respondents initially said they'd share their inbox, about 90% of those who actually used the service wanted to keep it. Sadly for them, it's still just a research project, but it could become a business.
There's a lot of university projects, such as Google, I think, that came out of this floor.
At Stanford, Jonathan Bloom, ABC 7 News.
And I'll switch to the other video.
By the time I finish this sentence, about 20 million emails will have been sent. In fact, people send an estimated 145 billion emails worldwide every day. CEOs and other top executives usually have personal assistants to handle all the tasks buried in those emails. But what about the rest of us? NBC Bay Area's Stephanie Trong joins us with the program one local group says will cut that email overload, Stephanie?
That's right, Jessica. It's a concept called crowdsourcing. Wikipedia is one example of it. What it boils down to is tapping into a large group of people for services and content. Now, the question here is, would you be interested in, say, doubling your productivity, even if it meant handing over your email password to a total stranger?
From the moment you wake up to when you're at work, whether it's on your desktop or on your cell, those emails just keep on coming.
And some of it has important tasks.
But the more time reading may mean less time doing.
And they seem trivial, but they really hold us back.
CEOs and top execs have their own solution, personal assistants who dig through emails for them.
Managing that onslaught.
But what about the rest of us?
I'd really like to push on.
This team of 3 from Stanford's computer science department came up with one solution: Email Valet. The test version used Gmail. It's a program that connects you with professionals online who become your remote assistants. They go through your emails, find the tasks, and put them into a list with the original emails just to the left. But first, like you hand your keys over to a valet, you'll have to hand over your password. The group decided to test the idea. Would people give strangers access to their emails?
We actually validated that it was indeed a crazy idea.
PhD student Nicolas Kokkalis says of the 600 people surveyed, less than 4% said they'd be willing to give up their passwords. People like Stanford Business grad student and study participant Anish Patel.
I think privacy is an issue.
But he changed his mind after the 10-day study. Email Valet has a feature built in where you can restrict what the assistant sees.
You can blacklist out anything that contains particular keywords like bank or password or credit card or anything.
They also built in a tracking feature.
We actually keep track of what the crowd worker has done.
Patel said those measures, plus cutting the headache of reading countless emails, made this program well worth it, especially because he said computer-driven email help programs fell flat for him.
I'd experimented with a few of them. Like, honestly, none of them ever seemed to really stick for me.
In the group study, Kokkalis says Email Valet doubled productivity compared to those who tried to manage tasks in emails by themselves. How much would you have to pay? It's estimated the total comes in at less than $2 a day or $60 a month.
That compared to a $3,000 per month salary of a real executive assistant.
So what got Kokkalis started on Email Valet in the first place? The idea came after creating a social media gaming platform.
We were measuring how much time people spent playing the games.
The total, more than 1 billion minutes, translated to 8-hour workdays.
That is about 2,000 years.
With services like Email Valet, he's hoping to give people time back. Fewer emails.
And have more time to play more games.
Now, as for the cost of all that, Email Valet creators say it would be less than $2 a day. It is still in the very early stages. They're hoping a company will see the potential for doubling this productivity and pick up the project. Jess and Raj?
How do we sign up for that again?
Very interesting, isn't it? All right, thanks, Stephanie.
Let's bring in our chief meteorologist, Jeff Ranieri. Happy Friday night to you.
Yeah, you too. As your
How would you
Not again. I'd like to thank Scott for introducing me to HCI research and for tirelessly advising my work in this dissertation. I'd like to thank Mendel for his patient advice and generous support throughout my entire PhD career. Michael for his candid advice and help on the second half of this thesis. Monica for her energy and support in recruiting participants. Cynthia Fan, Odysseas Chatalos, Greg Little, Wendy Mackay, Cameron Titleman, my parents and my sister for all the thoughtful discussions, love and support throughout the years. I also want to thank the StarTex staff for participating in many of the pre-studies of this thesis and for bearing with premature software. And I want to thank Odesk for being there and for sponsoring crowd workers. Finally, I want to thank my paper collaborators, my committee members, and I'm sure I'm forgetting many other people who deserve credit. Thank you. And with that, I will open to any questions you may have. Yes.
Yeah, so let me ask a question about the privacy question, the short-term versus long-term response. Let me say I said to you, look, you're going to save a lot of time if you don't lock your doors. You don't have to use keys, you just go in. And you say, I'm not very comfortable with that. You say, well, I've been doing it for a week and I'm getting more comfortable. do I trust that to say it's not really going to be a problem?
That's a very good question. Yes. So, we didn't address this problem in this thesis. We can't address it that easily. And I think that it's a really good question for future research. We helped a little bit, but because without Email Valet, for example, you would need to give out your username and password. And what happens if they change your password and you lose your email completely? So we managed to alleviate that pain, but we were not able to, we can't answer things like what you just said. Yes?
How do you compare like a crowdsource-based approach for your email handling with some algorithmic ways that, now the algorithms can read your emails, extract all the tasks, and just show you highlights of like these 10 emails out of your 300 emails. They contain tasks, and these are the tasks. So what, from also taking into account the privacy, what do you think will be going forward will be the mainstream?
So
Having a kind of agent rather than.
let me try to. Well, can you clarify what's a capsule before I?
So assume that there is a program
Mhm.
that reads all of your emails and identifies tasks that are defined in those emails.
I see.
Okay.
So
Compared to letting somebody go over like a human and do that for you.
yes, that's a very good question. The question is about comparing existing algorithmic ways that they automatically try to understand using machine learning or natural language processing which of your emails are important versus giving access to a human to do that. My answer is that the difference is in the accuracy and the quality of the response. We tried at least all of the NLP projects that we could, research projects that we could find, and all the programs that we could find, and there was a lot of mistakes of those algorithms. For example, they would either show you too many tasks or too little tasks, and I think that's the main difference. On the other hand, humans have this common sense ability to identify what's important in what is important in people's inboxes. Yes.
Yeah. And in that, we have to consider that the people who are looking at your inbox, they are not you, they don't have the same context. And something that you may consider important, they may not. And so it takes a while. It's like your personal assistant, for a reason, it's your personal assistant, because it is you, understand everything, bring up stuff to some of the stuff to your attention, some others not. That the same thing would happen between when you compare an automated approach versus the machine outside human.
That's right. That's also a very good point. So we saw that even in our limited studies, that the assistants over time became better and better at managing the specific individuals that they were helping. So, and that's probably why we saw the increase, the 65% of accuracy went up to 85% by the end of the study. And for that reason, we had a small chat functionality in the system where you could offline leave notes to the assistants of what you consider important, and the assistant could reply back by asking questions sometimes. So there was an example where an assistant asked the user, would you like me to extract tasks from so-and-so? And the user said, yes, I would like to. And then the assistant replied, okay, because you declined one of my tasks for him, so I just wanted to clarify. So that was an interesting conversation that we observed. And that raises the question of how do you institutionalize that implicit knowledge that happens inside the mind of the assistants. The chat paper trail is a first step, and more research needs to be done to find even better ways for that.
So maybe I can hit the reciprocal question Terry's. So let's say that we built an automatic vision-based door entry system. You're like, great. I promise you that whenever you walk up to your door, you never need to lock it. Whenever you walk up to the door, it'll let you in. Whenever anyone else walks up to the door, it won't let them in. My hypothesis would be that a lot of people still would feel a little bit uncomfortable making that first leap, even if after they're in it, as what you found with Email Valet, they say, oh, this is great, and I'm going to use this more and more. So the question that this suggests is, even if we build a perfect system, right, with assistants or automatic or whatever, there's still this leap people have to make to share their inbox. And I'm wondering, can you think of any ways that we can really make that leap a little bit less scary for people? How do we get them to make that first leap of trust for the assistants?
That's right. Well, we see that in many of the systems out there, that there is always a mini version of what they're offering, and that hooks you in, and then after you are hooked in, then you get to see the whole depth of the system. And this is pretty standard in game design. So in level 1 and 2 of the game, you see only limited functionality, and you get a small reward from it. And over time, it becomes more complex, and you get more benefit out of it. So system designers can come up with simple solutions that require much less giving up of privacy from the users to start to get them on. And then once they're on, then they can ask for more privacy, ask for more private data.
So would this be something like I can copy paste any email that I feel comfortable sharing, and it'll
Yes. For example, that yes, or creating a plugin that allows you to screen capture an email that's sitting in front of your screen, so without giving access to your full inbox to the system, and then little by little getting you to use it.
Yeah, yes. I'm just curious on that, because it's an interesting direction, which is in any kind of security mechanisms, there's always an analysis of what is the threat model. What is it you're worried about? You mentioned in particular, if I gave my password, this person could lock me out of my account. That's one kind of threat. They can do all sorts of other stuff with the password too. In a non-password situation, what is your sense of the threat model of things that could go bad if they did?
Many things could go bad. For example, as computer scientists in the beginning of this project, we were thinking that the most important feature that we would want to have is a system that automatically changes names, or tries to find credit card numbers or passwords or other things in the emails, and that it translates those to something else, maybe a temporary other name only used for the human assistant to see. And we were impressed when we saw that users didn't really have those concerns. But I think that these are very valid concerns, and approaches like this need to be created.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges of doing research in this domain?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thanks, Scott. So, people are used to existing tools and practices in personal information management. They have their own favorite email clients, task lists, and these are created by big companies, so they are full-featured and they have nice icons. So if you want to do research on these systems, then you either have to create your own, or to try to tack into existing ones, which may be difficult, maybe, especially in our cases, Gmail wasn't giving us the ability to do what we wanted to do. And if you create your own, then you get side effects. So users don't want to use them until they are polished enough to be able to replace their favorite email client, even just for a week. So yes, it's a pretty challenging field. Chinmay.
Somewhat related to that, one might think that you can make a completely different task tree system where people or rather email valet thing, where people actually send each other tasks instead of sending each other email, right? How do you think this the email valet thing compares to that hypothetical system, right? Why don't you? What's the disadvantage of creating this all new thing?
This would be a good feature for introducing more people, for example, to email valet. So if you create a task for yourself, and you can also create a task for someone else and click a button and send it to someone. The challenge here is that if the other person doesn't have the software, then they won't be able to see what you sent them. So in that respect, it's good because they will see a link that says install the software, start using email valet. But it doesn't really solve the problem that you're describing because that system is not ubiquitous yet. It's not something that everybody has. But email is a general purpose tool that everyone has. Yes.
One thing that your work does is it adds structure to email. One reason that email overload is so painful is that you get this big pile of completely unstructured stuff that you need to deal with in some way. And date received isn't a very meaningful piece of metadata. And there have been other systems that have tried to add structure onto email with varying degrees of success, like Terry's Communicator from several years back. What's your thought on how your work compares to that?
So that's a first practical step towards that direction. The communicator and other similar ideas are really, really fantastic. The only reason why they were not adopted is they're not used every day today. It's just because they failed on the adoption. So you need to have everyone using it to be able to get all the benefits from it. So that's why I think that we have to start from tools that people already use and try to make those tools better.
I've got a detailed question. With Task Genie's work, in one of your studies you were saying that you helped both with lingering tasks and with high-level tasks. And I'm wondering, what's the correlation between those two? Like in particular, is this loading on the same construct really? Most of the stuff that's lingering on my to-do list is high-level.
Yes. We have this number on the paper. I think it is 0.6, I don't remember. But yes, it's a pretty considerable correlation between those two. Yes. However, you can still imagine that there may be tasks that are of one kind but not of the other.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.